to Real American Monsters.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday night on the Untold Radio Network's Real American Monsters. I will be your host tonight, Chris Reinhardt. And backstage in the green room at the moment, we have a very special guest, the author of Paranormal Family and Friends, Mr. Frank Santariga. You know Al, the Squatch Father himself, is with us in this audience. This is Al's brother. And let me tell you, he's got just as much stuff going on that Al's got going on. And I'm very excited to have met him for the first time and got to know him a little bit. And I'm very excited to have him. So good evening, one and all. Good evening, Whispabs. Nice to see you. Good evening, Mary Jo. Good evening, the Squatch Father, Al Santariga. Good evening, Francesca. Good evening, Diane. Good evening, Franco Santariga. I think we're having a whole family reunion, and that's fit for the book because the book is all about family, and it's even got a family tree in it, and the chapters all go by family. I'm going to have to use the book here to go piece by piece, but Frank was kind enough to come out, and he hasn't done this in a long time, and he's kind enough to come on this show for the first time in a bit and tell his story and tell what he's experienced. And I mean, if you read the bio in the description of the video, you'll see what an amazing man Frank is. So we're glad to have him here. Before we get started, where are we? Here we go. Frankie Brown got her t-shirt. She was the winner of the last show, and she's got a Real American t-shirt, Real American Monster t-shirt. So thank you very much. Very appreciated. And tonight we are going to give away a copy of, it's got the blue screen look, of the Paranormal Family and Friends, and it's going to be autographed by Frank too. So you will have a chance at the end of the show to win an autographed copy of the book. So that's enough about me. I got everything I had to get out of the way, and now it's time to bring out our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Frank Santariga. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Chris. Yeah, how are you?
The same song that I play for your brother when I count.
Well, I thought I was supposed to get up and dance for a minute. I wasn't sure or not, but it sounded good. It sounded good.
Well, welcome to Real American Monsters. Everybody's excited to have you here. The chat room's lighting up, and more people are tuning in, and so welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So before we get started, why don't you give everybody that's listening just a little rundown, a little bio on yourself, how you got here, and how you got involved in the paranormal and all that.
Okay, just a real quick one is when I was a kid, I was always curious and always wanted to solve problems and mysteries, and that was always my ideal thing. And growing up in an Italian family, like I did. My aunts and my mom would always mention things about spirits and ghosts and things of that nature. And that always got my curiosity up also. Then at the age of 14, I went to Italy to visit my grandfather. My mother and my sister and I went to Italy with her. And there I had an experience where I was with my cousin, and he belonged to a bicycle club. And we were riding bicycles up around the mountains up there. And as we were coming to a tunnel, the guys, well, they were way ahead of me because I'm not a bicycle rider like they were. They were way ahead of me, and they stopped, and I noticed them pointing up to the sky and all. So as I pulled in alongside of them, I looked up, and there was a globe, we might call it, or a sphere, and it was about the size of a dime if you held it at arm's length, and there was all sparkles coming across of it. Right away, I thought it was like, wow, look, a meteor's coming down here or something. And all of a sudden, it stopped mid-flight in such a great speed. It shot down, went around the mountain, went around that mountain. That mountain, to get around that mountain is 14 miles. I remember that. Yeah, it was almost 20 kilometers to go around that mountain in a second. And it shot up in the air and it took off across the mountains. That made me a believer in UFOs. I couldn't tell you what it was. It wasn't a flying saucer as you would think a flying saucer would be. It was, like I said, a sphere with sparks coming around off of it. But for it to come down, shoot around a mountain, and shoot back up and out, everybody was saying, flying saucer, in Italian, they were saying disco volante, all that. And there was a couple of tourists from, I think they were from Germany, but they spoke English, and they heard me swearing. Unfortunately, I didn't know what it was. And they says, you're American? I says, yeah. He says, did you see that? I says, yeah. I says, I don't know what it was. And he says, oh, we got to tell our people. And so in other words, with about 20 people of us hanging around there. Well, that made me a believer. And then I said, wow, I got to get really into this stuff. And slowly but surely, I started doing it. And then I think it was like 1976, 75, I came across an article about a course that was given by the American Parapsychological Research Institute in California. And I was living in Colorado at the time. So I said, you know what? I think I'm going to start taking it. And that's one of the, I guess, the first courses you could take online. It wasn't online, but you could. It was like you write your theses or whatever you had to do, your exams, and you hand them in, and then they will give it back. So I took that course. I took all the popular paranormal courses, tarot cards, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, UFOs, again, monsters like Bigfoot. Well, back then was Yeti, that Yeti, and just about everything that you could think of paranormal things would be. And so I did that for, I think it was about a year and a half. And then for the final exam, you had to go there to do the final exam. So I went there and I took the final exam, passed and all. And that's it. That's how I got my certification in parapsychology. And when I got back, got divorced, split up, and moved to Yonkers, back to Yonkers, and met my future wife in Connecticut, where I worked. I worked for, at that time, General Electric. So I met her there, and then we got an apartment. We started doing there, and that's when I really started getting into it. I got a letter, and back then it was an email. One of the first emails you could get back then. I got an email from one of the institute guys, and they said, would you like to start learning? Somebody could use your help. We have a former director who lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. Maybe you might want to team up with him, and he'll show you around and do things. So I met up with this gentleman named, his name was James McDermot, and we palled around for about 2 years, and he took me to different things. He showed me the different ways of they did their researches and their investigations. Back then, we didn't have all these fancy equipment. I mean, we had a tape recorder, a cassette tape recorder, 35 millimeter camera. Sometimes you got the Polaroid camera with us. We brought the Polaroid cameras, but we always had a psychic with us. And the psychic we had, she was tremendous. She was excellent. Her name was, oh God, I think it was Ellen. I think Ellen's Wadsworth. She was from New York City. She was 72 years old, but she was terrific. Let me tell you. I mean, we would ask her if she'd like to come and help us out on cases. We wouldn't tell her a thing. I mean, we wouldn't tell her a thing. She'd jump on a train, come up to Greenwich, or sometimes James would go down and pick her up with his car, and we would go on sites, and she would just come up and just whip out, this is what happened here. This is what's causing this. She was just terrific. I mean, I don't know, after that, I think she went to live in Florida. It was Florida. She went to go live in Florida again. And we haven't heard from then. And then James, believe it or not, was having trouble as usual with people coming to his house saying, you got to lay off these things, what you're doing. And we were doing mostly UFOs at that time, mostly UFO sightings and investigations. And he says, he got a lot of people coming to his house telling him you got to lay off doing these things. He said, or else, something bad might happen. He did. He laid off. He took the word because he heard through the grapevine that there were things that were happening to other people and other, members of families of other people. And he came from a real well-to-do family. So, the last I heard is that he was packed up and he went out to somewhere in the Bahamas. And I never, I did meet his sister. One time I started to work in Greenwich at that time. I was working in Greenwich and I was going down Greenwich Avenue at lunchtime. And I heard someone call my name. And I looked and it was Barbara, his sister, his younger sister. And she, say, hey, how are you? And everything. We started talking. I said, well, how's James doing? And she said that James went missing. He went missing. Yeah, he went missing 2 years prior. 2 years before I met her there 2 years ago. And he was on his boat. He had a small sailboat, a nice sailboat, beautiful sailboat. He showed me pictures of it. And they just found his boat. They never found him. They're thinking that he came across some squalls or something and he fell in the water and just never found him again. And that's when I started on my own. Then I started getting people to call me, and the Institute would send people to, they would get calls at the Institute. They would forward, calls like from Connecticut, Westchester, New York, a couple of Jersey, but I never went to Jersey though. I got some there. I canceled. I never went there. But I would follow up on, reports with those people there. And and that's basically how I worked out. I did that. And my wife wasn't too happy with it, spending weekends away a few times. But, that's what it was. But I know that's how it started.
Okay. So what got you interested in writing a book about your family and all the activity that's happened around the family? Let's
Well, my cousin Yvonne, we were sitting down, we were having coffee one time, my cousin Yvonne and I, and my wife at the time, we were having coffee, and my mother was starting to feel ill. She wasn't getting well. And we were, of course, she's always talking about ghosts and everything. She always wanted to know what I knew, what was new with me, what I was doing. And she said, you should do, she goes, all these things that you've done, you should write a book about it. Do it for your mom. She's not, maybe she would. I said, well, I don't know if my mom would understand it. But she goes, yeah, why don't you do it? And then I said, well, you're going to be retiring soon. You should write a book. And so, I got my material together, spent about almost 2 years getting all it together and getting copies made, getting it draft, and then have it checked and all. It took me about 2 years to get it out published, but it did well. I mean, it did well in Japan. It did well in Australia, New Zealand, but here, I got a few, But I wasn't looking to make money. I really purposely did it for my mom and my cousin, my family. I did it for them.
Well, it's very interesting the way you have it set up. The chapter by chapter. You have the family tree and everything. Let's talk a little bit about the family tree and go down the family tree a little bit and tell everybody a little bit about each family member and what they bring to the table for the what about the book.
Okay, so I'm gonna open up that part there so I could take a look too. How I set it up. Like I said, it's been a while since I have it. Okay. All right. So, okay, we have my grandmother, Nana. Nana was my grandmother. on my father's side. All right. Then my dad and mom. Then my father's sister, Z Valeria, my Aunt Valeria and her husband. And then from there, Aunt Valeria had Claudia, my cousin Claudia. And also from my grandmother, my ZD on my Aunt Adrian. And she had Roland, Adrian, Yvonne, and Anthony. Yvonne, on that side of the family, I believe had some capability, psychic capability. She did. But she never told me, she always told me stories that my mother had told her, but she never told me her own stories. My Aunt Valeria, she told me some, as you see in the book, she told me quite a few stories about the family. And my cousin Claudia in the book also, you'll see that she has experiences also. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to her on the phone. She's in Italy, at her home in Italy, and she told me she's still hearing footsteps coming up and down the stairs. And then on my side of the family, where my dad, he wasn't psychic at all. He was the biggest skeptic you could find. But there's a good story with him, which changed. Well, I don't know if it changed his mind, but he did get an experience. My sister, she has some psychic ability, I believe. Me, zero psychic ability. Al, well, Al, I don't know what he is. He's a giant magnet of these weird things. I don't know how he does it, but he's managed to get everything going.
He's a
So
sponge.
that's our family tree, and we could go through the stories if you want on them, and you can see what happens.
Sure. Would you being a parapsychologist?
Yeah.
Why do you think that the strange kind of stuck around your family these years with all these different stories? Do you think they just happened to be in the right places, or do you think there was a link with the family in the afterlife or the high strangeness, whichever you want to refer it to?
I think that they have the ability. I think, first of all, I think everyone has the ability to do this. It's just how you center it, how you train it. You can become a psychic. I mean, I've been told that by psychics that they could train themselves to become a psychic. I mean, maybe you won't talk to the dead, or you won't talk to the dead, but you might not be able to do fortune telling or precondition or regressions or whatever. But everyone has the ability to do this. It's just you have to put an effort in doing it. Now, in my family, it's hereditary. I believe. I mean, it's in the genes. It just comes down to the family. That's the way I see it. I mean, it doesn't get to everyone. I don't have it. I believe my sister has some. I know Al might have some, but I have zero. I mean, not that I try to train myself either. I don't. I rather just investigate it, research it. I like that. I like the mystery part of it.
Well, you've witnessed a whole bunch, Frank. I mean, you've more than a normal person has witnessed ever.
Well, a lot of it had to do because I went and I did investigations and research. Yeah, I did that. Yeah. I went. Yes, you're right. I did witness a lot. Yeah, and a lot of it I just could not explain. A lot of it I did explain, but a lot of it also I couldn't explain.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of it you can't explain.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know we're not probably going to be able to touch all of the book, and so let's go to a couple favorite parts of your book. Let's touch about your mom. Let's go there because you wrote the book for her.
Right.
Let's start with her. Let's start with what she experienced.
Well, yeah, she like I said, she used to get terrific migraine headaches, and I think this was a prelude to what her psychic ability would give her. A lot of times she would be just, for a good example, one of the stories in the book is about my cousin Adrian. My cousin Adrian is, I believe she was like 26 years old at the time. She was having a problem with drugs and alcohol, and we all knew that. Then I don't remember the year exactly, but I was living in Colorado at the time when I got the call that she had passed away. When I moved back, we sat down, my cousin Yvonne and I, we talked about it. And my cousin Yvonne says, well, did your mom ever tell you what happened to her when my sister died? I said, no, what happened? She goes, well, she goes, she was working. My mother was a seamstress. She was making dresses. She was working, and all of a sudden, she pulled up some material. And after she pulled up the material, she saw the face of my cousin Adrian. And right away, my mother fainted. She just fainted. She fell down, and the boss and everyone around, helped her up, gave her water, and she calmed down. She said, I just had a terrible vision. And then she went back to work. About an hour later, my dad comes into the shop where she was working, and he's walking slowly towards her, and she turns and she looks, and he's looking at her, and before he could say a word, my mother says, Adrian's dead, right? And my dad said, how did you know? What? How? She goes, no, I don't want to talk about it. And she goes, but she's dead, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, my cousin Adrian at the time was in rehab, so we thought she was going to get better. But somehow she had a problem with her liver and other things, and she just collapsed on it. But that was a real shocker. But my mother never told me. She told everyone else, but she never told me about that story. Well, I was in Colorado at the time, but when I got back, she never told me about that. The other time was when she was visiting my sister in Florida. She would go down to Florida for most of the winter. My mom, to just be with my sister. And one night, she was ready to go to bed, and she sat down on her bed, and she just started to lay down, and all of a sudden, like a vapor started to form around the room, and it came into a shape of a face, and the face came to her and said, hello. And she looked, and she recognized it was a woman that that was friends of our family. Her name was Mary Babbitt. And she goes, oh my God, Mary. And all of a sudden, the figure just dissipated and went away. So next morning, my mother didn't say anything to my sister, but my cousin Yvonne called from New York to Florida to talk to my mother about Mary. She says, do you know who passed away? And my mom says, I know. She goes, it was Mary, right? She goes, yeah. And she goes, well, what time? And then my mom says, it was probably about 11 o'clock. And she goes, yes, at 11 o'clock, Mary passed away. So my mom just had that ability. I mean, it's terrible that it seemed to be everything that was bad she was able to see. But she just had that ability to do it. Yeah.
Did they confide in your mother during their lives? Did they call your mother for advice or anything like that? Was your mother that type? She was that part of the family?
Well, my mom wasn't. She didn't like the idea that she had that ability. She really hated it. To be honest, she hated that idea. But my aunt Adrian, people would go to her. She was like the witch of the family, the good witch of the family. People would go to her if they thought they had a curse on them, or if they needed better luck or something. We had back then the Italians were were more superstitious. The people that came over from the other side, they still held on to the superstitions of everybody had. So, and they would come to them and ask, to get rid of this curse, or I need help with money or something. They would come to my cousin, my Aunt Adrian. They would come to her and tell her about that. So I guess it must have worked sometimes, because they kept coming to her, as far as I know.
Right.
But, yeah. So
I think we've all lost that a little bit over the years now that, that superstition's gone, but it's actually pretty real. Would you agree, Frank, that what all that is, it's like real. It's not like just made up stuff.
Yeah, I like I was telling you before, I think there is something that we just don't have a grasp of right now. There's, like I said, I at one time I didn't believe in dimensions and different realms, but speaking to so many different people, and people who, that are not just involved with the paranormal, but people who were, again, scientists and physicists. When I used to be a member of MUFON back here in Michigan, I used to sit at a table with the three professors, One was a professor of psychology. The other was a physicist, and the other was some kind of a mathematician, analysis. I forgot, like a statistical math professor. But they were there mostly to gather around, see what people were doing, and finding out things. Especially the psychologist, he wanted to know what was going on with all these people, coming up, we're all seeing UFOs and Bigfoot and things like nature up there. So there is something to it. There is definitely something to it. I mean, I've been doing it, like I said, for over 30 years, and I just, you got it. There's something to this thing.
Gotcha. All right, so you mentioned your father being a hard ass on all this, and not being a believer, but you also mentioned he had quite the experience.
Yeah, he did.
I on that a little bit.
Yeah, let me relate that to you. At the time, I was living in Norwalk, Connecticut, and I was visiting my father down in Yonkers. And I would brought my books because I planned to stay there for a while and do some studying of with my paranormal things. And at that time, my father's best friend came in to visit my father, and he sat down. We started talking. It's been a long time since I have seen Angelo, so we talked for a while, and he says, "Well, what are you reading?" I told him what it was. He says, "Well, what kind of crap is that?" I says, "Well, it's it's about ghosts and hauntings." And I mean, I'm not going to repeat it on the show what he said, but hey, he says, "Did your father ever tell you the story that we have?" And my dad was sitting right next to him. He says, "Come on," he said, "you're not going to talk about that BS, are you?" He says, "I don't want to hear it." My dad got up and walked away from the table. He didn't want to hear it. He says, "No, I'm going to tell you." Now, you got to figure, Angelo was in the Marines in World War II. He was a Marine. He fought all kinds of battles in the Pacific too. And so he was no shy guy. He's seen a lot of death and things. So he said about it. I think it was 2 years ago before I got there. That 2 years prior, they had gone fishing at Montauk. They like to go for what they called whitings. They're a small codfish. They're codfish, but they're smaller. Mm-hmm. They come in the winter, and they usually, come around in the winter around the docks and there. So they went to fishing to Montauk Point. So they found a spot. They always used to go there every year. They would go do their little fishing thing. So, but this year they noticed that it used to be an old Coast Guard base, I believe, an old Coast Guard base during World War II. They fenced it in. It was fenced in. And my dad and Andrew said, "How the heck we're going to get in?" But they managed to find a gate that was left open. So they ran around the corner. They went on the gate and they started walking down to the dock. It was quite a long walk because they used to take their car there, but it became a longer walk for them because they had to leave the car out. They get to the dock and they start setting up and they do all their fishing. Now, you mind, it's in the middle of the winter, so it's like 18 degrees. It's pretty cold. So, but they got their catch. They were happy with it. They got their buckets and everything. They said, "Hey, we got enough. Let's get going. It's cold." So as they were going, they were leaving now. Again, I'm sorry, I meant to tell you, this happens at night. They were fishing at night. All right. So it's about, they got there. I think he told me he got there about 9:30. And they fished till like it was a little after 12, and now they were out. They got their fish. They're happy. They're coming out of the area where the dock was. As they're walking down this path, right? They're going down. They noticed an old airplane hangar, a seaplane hangar where they used to put the seaplane in during World War II, and they noticed that the light keeps flickering up in the hangar. And my father says, "Hey, there must be some bums there starting a fire inside that place." And Angela goes, "Hey, I don't blame them. It's kind of cold. I would start a fire too." And as they're still walking down that path, they're keeping their eye on the hangar. The light is getting brighter and brighter. And Angela goes, "Hey, I think this thing's out of control. I think we better call a fire department. There's a major fire there." And as they're approaching to where the hangar doors are, to the hangar, all of a sudden the hangar doors fly open. Out comes a form. They can't make what it is, but right now it's like 6 foot, like a fire. It's about 6 foot high, comes flying by, and as it gets right in front of them, it changes into a man screaming. And he said the scream was so loud and so pitched that they dropped their fish. And Angelo turned around. He ran back towards the water. My dad turned around real quick and ran after him and got him before he'd go into the water, into the ocean over there. He said, "What the hell's the matter with you? You know, you could have got killed. He said, did you see that? Did you see that?" And my father goes, "It was just our imagination." I mean, I started laughing because my father would say something like that. He said, you know, it's nothing. It's no big deal. But they were really shaken up by that. And as it goes, Angelo was driving at the time. He just couldn't hold on to the steering wheel. He was just so nervous. He said, I never saw something like that in my life. I don't know what it is. So they stopped at a diner, not too far from where they were fishing, to get a cup of coffee and then calm Angelo down and everything. And, you know, Angelo's still shaking, and there's hardly no one in the diner at the time, just the owner, maybe a couple of other people. As he was trying to get coffee, trying to drink the coffee, the owner says, "What's the matter with you? It's not that cold out there?" He goes, "Oh, you won't believe what I saw." And the owner nonchalantly says, "You saw Hangman's ghost." And Angelo dropped his coffee. "How the hell do you know about that?" And then he went on to tell the story. He says, "You're not the first guy to come in here and say that." He said, "That Hangman's ghost has been in there happening since the end of World War II. Everybody's been seeing them every once in a while. Somebody comes in saying this, that you saw Hangman's ghost." So it was I mean, for Angelo, a guy, like I said, he's tough as nails. Nothing could ever bother him. After he spoke with me, he was still he was shaking. He says, I even hate telling you about it because it scares me all the time. I don't know what the hell it was. But later on, I think my friend Joe and I, we went out there to see ourselves. I mean, of course, I'm nosy. I want to go out and see myself what's going on. I get down there. I think it was maybe we went in the summer, though. We didn't go in the winter. We went in the summer. We went down there. And we played a little fishing, you know, just to spend the weekend knocking around. And I says, well, we didn't do good. It was raining. I believe it was raining hard. So we said, well, you know, we'll take our time getting there. We get there. We pull alongside the fence where the hangar is, the airplane hangars. We could see the hangar in the lot back there. So as we get there, a cop car pulls up. "What are you guys doing?" I said, "Well, you know, want to go fishing, you know, off the dock." He said, "No," he says, "You can't go. It's he says the government closed it up. Coast Guard don't want nobody in there. You need special permission to get in there and all that." He said, "Well, we wanted to try it." And he said, "Well, you know, there's other places to fish. You don't have to do there." He said, "Well, to tell you the truth, we want to know about Hangman's ghost." And I thought the cop was going to say something stupid, like, "What the hell you guys doing?" You know, something like that. And he wanted to say that, you're one of those guys come to look for Hangman's ghost. He says, 2 months ago, 2 kids jumped over the fence, snuck through the dock. They fell through the dock and they drowned. He says, "You want to find out yourself like that just to see the ghost?" The guy says, I said, "Well, you know, we're curious." I told him, I investigate these things. I like to see what it's about. And he went on to tell me, he says, "All right," he said, "I'll tell you something." He says, he went on to tell me that, he says, there's rumors that there is a ghost there and all. He was a nice guy. He wound up being a real nice guy. And he told me his partner told him all the stories about that. It's more in the book. It gets really, I get more into it in the book. You could see it more. Okay. But basically, after we talked to him, we started to rain again. So we say, the hell with the fishing. Let's go to the motel, get our room, all that. So we stopped. We stopped at exactly the same diner that my dad did a few years back. So we stopped there and we talked to the people. "Hey, Joe, who's the guy who's been here the longest?" And they pointed some guy out. "That guy there, he's been the longest. You could talk to him about it." So, yeah, I says, "You ever hear of Hangman's ghost?" And he went on to tell the stories that, we, as kids, we used to go there and everything. We saw them, but we never saw the ghost. They never saw the ghost, but he said, "We've always heard stories about Hangman's ghost." Now, but he went and told us how the story started. it happened that a sailor got special leave to go into to a home, and his home at the time, I think was in Queens. It was in Queens, New York, and he was going to surprise his wife that he's got the week off on leave, and we could do whatever we want. He gets home. Unfortunately, his wife was with another guy when he got home, and he went out of his mind. He wound up killing his wife and the guy. And he got on the train, went back to Montauk, grabbed a rope, and he hung himself in the hangar. And that's how they got Hangman's ghost. I mean, that's what I was told. I tried to investigate the newspapers there. I forgot what it's called, the Montauk Guardian, whoever it was back then. But I couldn't find anything of mention of that. But I did find the article where a sailor had killed his wife and his wife's lover. That but it didn't mention that that he was from Montauk Base or whatever. It just said the sailor had killed his wife and his, a lover together.
Right.
So that that was my father's experience. But he'll say to the day he died, he said it was my imagination. Angelo didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He still says it.
So let's touch a little bit on that, Frank. So Angelo got really upset, shaken. He was shaken by it, and your pop, and he's in denial. Why do you think there's two different reactions to the same story? What's involved in all that?
I guess it's personalities. A lot. You have to do a lot to get my father to get excited about anything. That's the way he was. He was down to earth. He had to see it. You can't talk to him about things. He wants to see it himself. It's, show me, that type of person. You got to show me that type. Well, Angelo was a little bit more open-minded, and it just caught him off guard. That's it.
Right. I just wonder what you thought. Why there was two different, but it's a very cool story. Somebody asked in the chat about the name of your book. I did give the name of the book at the beginning of the show. It's called Paranormal Family and Friends by Frank Santariga, and we are giving away an autographed copy at the end of the show. So just to let everybody who's just tuning in now know the name of the book. So now we're approaching Al's section of the book.
I guess Al could tell you more than me about that. He's the one who told me the stories about. I mean, he's spoken to you about the Bigfoot.
Oh yeah. I knew about the story about your dad. He told me about that.
Oh, he told you about my dad.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Me and Al, we talk every day.
Okay.
So we're really good friends, and everybody needed to hear that story because it's a great story. So let's touch base. Let's see what the stories that I have to refer to so much here to the book to what Al told you. And let's see, Al's with the skunk ape. We have the Florida. All right, well, let's hear about Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Is that a UFO?
Yeah, that was Al's there. He could tell you better than I can. I think that's the time he saw the star one. He was working in the post office. At the time he was working at the post office, he was I believe he was on break or he was going home. It was at night, and he noticed a little dot in the sky, and that little dot got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then finally it came right in front of him, and he noticed it was a UFO. And I believe it was a diamond-shaped one. I'm not in the book, but I think it was a diamond-shaped one at the time, not the big one that he saw in Fairfield.
Okay.
Yeah, that Fairfield one is that to me was a real big one because I was on the track of. I think I was telling you I was on the track of that one myself because I was painting. In fact, I was painting. Al used to live with us up on the top floor, and I was painting one of his rooms, and I was listening to the radio and the talk show. And the guy came on and said, "Hey, look, there's a UFO coming up on Main Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut." And I said, "What?" And then the guy says, we don't want to hear that story." The host of the radio show says, he's going to have a hard time finding a place to park, and all that. He made a joke out of it. But the guy got kind of mad on the radio and said, "Hey, you go look, take yourself out there and look out your window. You'll see it." So he went out there and he looked and he saw the UFO. He says, I see something out there. It's huge. He says, I'm going to put on some commercials, but I'm going to run up to the roof and see for myself. So I'm anxious for this guy to get back to tell us what he saw. And he comes back and he finally says, yeah, it's right. This thing is huge and it's going up Main Street. It's going north. I heard that. I said, this is terrific because I'm right off of Main Street and I'm on the way up for this UFO to show up. So I just dropped my paintbrush and everything, and I just grabbed my camera, grabbed my binoculars, and get down to my car. I look up the street to see if I could see this thing, and I don't see it. So I turn on the radio in my car to find out where it's at. Then I heard the guy says, well, it's heading towards Fairfield, towards Park Avenue on Fairfield. So now it's going more towards north instead of going more west than north. So I said to myself, well, I'll catch it up by Sacred Heart University. So I'm rushing around trying to get by. I see cop cars flying by me with their sirens on and everything. I don't know what it was, but unfortunately, I had to stop, let them go by. And then I got caught on the traffic light. I got caught behind the traffic, and I couldn't get past them. But by the time I got to Park Avenue, I have the radio on all the time. The guy says it's finally going more west towards New York, and that's where I guess where Alfred saw it. That's where Alfred saw it off the Murr Parkway in Fairfield. And I missed my big chance. My big chance to see it. This giant UFO. I didn't get to see it. But when Al got home to the house, he's saying he's all excited. He says, "You won't believe what I saw. You won't believe it." I said, "You saw a UFO, right?" He goes, "Oh yeah. How do you know?" And I said, "I heard it on the radio. I was trying to get to it myself." Then he went on to explain how all the cars on the parkway were stopped on both sides, and everybody was looking up, and even there was police stopped looking up at this thing, and but nobody wanted to file a report on it. That I think took me away from UFOs. That sign, because after that I checked with the Bridgeport Airport, I checked with Westchester Airport. I checked with other news places, even that radio station. I checked with their news agency to see if they had anything on this. No one had a thing about it. No one, not one person. None of the airports, none of the police stations, and none of the news radio stations. Mm-hmm. I think that's what turned me. I said, you know what? I'm not going to be that hot and heavy on this anymore. I'm just going to take it easy. It was just a big turnoff. Like right now, we know damn well there's something going on, but nobody tells us anything. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, when Maria, my wife, she's in the chat room right now. When I told you about that ship, I showed you the pictures last night when we were talking about that craft that was over our house. I tried to report it to MUFON. MUFON never called me back. I went higher, and I went higher than that to try to report it, and never got answers back. Yeah. There was nothing on any reports that night, and there was nothing, but we saw it plain as day, and it was the hugest thing, and something's going on. I agree with you there.
No, really. I mean, and Al could tell you, he saw it right after this huge thing. He said it was like Yankee Stadium upside down. That's how big it was. It was huge, just all lit up. And he says right after it started going away, 2 jet fighters, treetop level, come flying through there. It scared everybody to death. So it's not like nobody knew about it. Nah, there's something going on. There's something definitely going on.
You have a sister,
Marilena.
Yeah. Did she ever experience any of this stuff or any of the?
Like I said, I not that I know of. She might have told Al or something, but I never. We never talked. She never mentioned it to me, but she does. Believe in it because my mom, when was with her, she would see things that my mom would do and things. So she did tell me that she has some kind of psychic ability, but we never got into it what it really was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get into one of your cases. I mean, you said you did a ton of cases. We'll get off the book for a couple of seconds. We're almost at the hour mark already, Frank. And we will open up questions for Frank and If you leave them in all capital letters, I've been watching the chat. I will star them, and we will get back to them after. So let's get into one of your most extreme, crazy story cases that you ever experienced. Let's go
Okay.
there.
By all accounts, the worst, I call it the worst thing I experienced was the Ouija board. Back again when I worked at General Electric, I had a good friend. He knew that I was taking these courses, and he would come in every once in a while, how I was doing all. And he came into me. He said to me, Frank, he says, can you help me and my wife? She's having these nightmares. I want you to see if you can help her. She went to a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. She went to a psychologist and talked about it, and it didn't help her. She I forgot what the family pastor. She talked to the pastor. He couldn't help her. He just said pray more, that type of thing. Pray more. I said, well, what's the wrong? She's having these bad nightmares. You think maybe you could come over? And I said, what do you expect? I'm not a doctor. I said, what do you expect me to do? He says, but these are weird, these nightmares, and maybe you might know something about it. I says, all right, when do you want me to come? He says, how about, Saturday night, come over and have some coffee and you can talk to my wife. So I said, okay, well, he says, yeah, bring your wife, come over, we'll have coffee and everything. So I said to my wife, I said, Bob, his real name was Bob Turner. I could say the real name. In the book, I couldn't use the real name. But I said, Bobby invited us over, with Kathy to have some coffee and cake. He wants me to talk to her about something that's bothering her. And I'll just say it now real quick. My wife goes, it's none of this parapsychology bullshit, is it? I said, well, my wife was totally against it. But she did have psychic ability too, my wife. But anyway, she was totally against it. She goes, I don't want to go. I don't want you to start talking about that kind of stuff. I don't like you talking about this. I said, come on, just do me that favor. It's really for Kathy. It's not for Bobby. So, okay. So we go. And she goes around telling me that she's been having this vivid dream of her father trying to talk to her and ask for forgiveness. Because I guess her father was very dominant in the family. He used to hit his wife. He was very, very cruel type of person, and he used to hit the kids and everything like that. Nobody liked him. And the mother finally got a divorce, and they split up. But in the meantime, they found out that he had passed away. But in the dream, she sees her father coming to her all the time, saying, "Please, please forgive me." And she wakes up all the time screaming, no, he's really bad. It was bothering her. I said, well, what do you expect me to do for you, Kathy? I says, it sounds just a bad nightmares you're having. She goes, well, a friend of mine who does what's it called? Those tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
She says, maybe you might want, she told me maybe you might talk to somebody who is a parapsychologist or a ghost hunter or could communicate with spirits. Not me. She goes, I just do strictly tarot cards, but there's people who can communicate with spirits or know about that type of thing. And she goes, well, I'll try anything because I haven't had a night's sleep in over a week. She goes, I think Bobby knows Frank. He's studying to do things like that. Maybe he might be able to help. So she says, go, ask him. Maybe he might be able to help. So he did ask me this. I went over. So I says, but what do you want me to do? How can I help you? She goes, well, maybe you can communicate with him. I says, well, how? She goes, how about with a Ouija board? Now, I had bought a Ouija board. It was in the trunk of my car for months and months and never touched it. I never touched it. And I said, a Ouija board? I says, I said, how do you, okay. I just happen to have one in the trunk of the car. I never opened it. It's one of those Milton Bradley Ouija boards you could buy at the store. I said, yeah, all right. I said, we'll try it. And if it could help, we'll do it. We'll do it. So, I went down to the car, came back up, opened up the package, opened up the Ouija board. I pretty much, by studying, I know how to use it and everything like that. So we all sat down, and I said, well, you got to get a partner. I says, it can't be Bob, your husband, because he's going to know a lot of these things, and he may move the planchette a little bit more than you, and you'll go to things that you're not supposed to. So the only person that she could pick was my wife. My wife, when she said, she goes, no way am I going to touch that thing. She goes, I said, look, I poured her aside. You don't have to touch this thing. I said, you just put your fingers over it. All right. Just put your fingers over it. All right. Just see what happens. All right. She goes, this is the last time I'm going to do these things for you. I'm never going to want. I said, all right. Just do me this favor. So we started. So, and we asked questions like, who's here? And it's spelled out Dad. And then, we all, froze out. Bob was writing down everything, the letters, all the letters. He was writing down everything that it was saying. And said, and then we asked, what do you want? And then it moved around, and it said forgiveness. And then he wrote that down. And said, and then it says why? And we asked, why do you want us to forgive you? And he says something to the extent that it'll help me pass on to the next level. Something like pass on higher, I think it was something like that. Pass on higher. So he goes, and if I forgive you, you will leave me and alone. And it said yes. I need, and then it kept going. This is need your forgiveness. So she says, I forgive you. She says, I forgive you. And then it spelled out, I love you. And then it went all off the board. They dragged it off the board. I said, wow. I said, that's something else. I said, that's incredible. I was shocked that she did, that thing worked. So she felt better. You could also see her face change. She's changed. Her face got better. She looked more calm, relieved. She looked relieved. I says, I guess it worked. It might have worked. She was happy. She goes, oh, let's have coffee, and everything. So we sat down at the dining table, cutting up a pie and having coffee. We were talking about other things, about work and things, kids. And all of a sudden, I see her looking over my shoulder towards where we were on the coffee table in the living room. And she's looking, I said, what the hell is she looking at? And I turned around. The planchette was moving by itself. Moving by itself. I tell you, the chills went up my neck. And usually this doesn't bother me. It went up my neck. It was just going up. My hair stood up, my arms and everything. And she got up to go and touch it. I grabbed her. I leaped over my car. I grabbed her by the arm and I pulled her. I said, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. I said, good God, we forgot to say goodbye. We forgot to say goodbye. We forgot to end it.
Yeah, you didn't close the board.
Yeah, so go back there. We have to end it. She goes, why? I said, just end it real quick. Say goodbye. So she went and she just put her hands on it and just said, you spelled out goodbye. Then she comes back, why? Why'd you stop me? She says, one thing I learned for all these books I've been reading is that you don't touch that thing if it starts moving by itself, because that's something evil trying to get in. And I tell you, I was so upset. I said, next morning, I dug a hole in the backyard, put the board in there, lit it on fire, made it all ashes, buried it. Last time I ever touched a Ouija board in my life. That was it. I never touched it after that. And then my wife goes to tell me that she goes, you told me not to touch it, to move it. I said, yeah, right. Yeah. She goes, guess what? She goes, Kathy, her hands weren't touching it either all the time. Wow. I said, what? She goes, it was just moving by itself. We were just directing it. It was just, we just had our hands over it. I said, well, I'll tell you one thing. That's the last time I'll ever use a Ouija board. That was, to me, one of the really, really scary times for me. It's scary. It actually, I like I said, I had goosebumps everywhere after that happened. So what I tell people, don't fuss with a Ouija board. It's not a game. Don't play with it. Don't. That's my philosophy on that.
Yeah, especially if you don't know that you got to close it or anything like that. I mean, it's
Yeah, I completely forgot because everything seemed to be good. Everything was nice. The spirit was forgiven. The girl looked nice. Her complexion was back. She was happy. We forgot. We forgot to say goodbye to end it. Yeah, that was a thrill. I'll tell you,
right.
unbelievable.
Wow.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, that one and one other one. This one I want to make it quick. If I got time, I'll make it quick.
Oh, you got time.
Okay.
Want to tell everybody after he tells the story, guys, we're going to take some questions. So get your letters in capital letters and I will star them so we can get back to them.
Okay. Now we had a neighbor where we live in Oxford, Oxford, Connecticut. We had a neighbor. We just moved in the area, and when my wife was having a party for the guys who helped me move and for the people, the neighbors. Lo and behold, my friend Nick starts talking to my neighbors and everything, and they ask questions about me. And my friend Nick tells him, "Oh yeah, Frank, he's into ghosts and things like that." Oh, oh yeah, and, I thought they were going to call me some kind of a quack right off the bat or something. But he goes, "Yeah, he's into that kind of stuff. It's really interesting." But I go into the kitchen. My wife asked me to go get a platter of some cheese or pieces of cheese. I go into the kitchen. One of my new neighbors, Vesna, a younger a woman, her and her husband, she comes up to me. She goes, "I heard you do parapsychology work and you do hauntings and ghosts and things like that." I said, "Well, I do some investigations. Yeah, I do some of that." She goes, "Do you want to hear my story?" Well, I says, let me bring this cheese out to my wife. The people are waiting for it. I said, "Yeah, I'll come back in." So I come back into the kitchen where she was waiting for me, and she tells me a story about her and her brother that had just moved from New Jersey to Trumbull, Connecticut, and her father works for some chemical company in Greenwich. So they've just bought a house in Trumbull, Connecticut, and they was on a lake. I think it was right off of. I think it was right off Main Street. But anyway, she was saying they were playing. It was the winter time. They were looking at the house. They were thinking where they're going to put all the furniture and things. It wasn't furnished yet. They didn't move in yet, and so they did that. And she said, "Mom, can me?" Her and her brother wanted to play. I believe they were like. I think she's 12 and her brother was 11. I have to check the book, but I think they were that age, 12 or 11. And she said, "Could we go play outside?" She goes, "Yeah, it's fine. You could go play outside." They were going playing outside, and they were throwing snowballs and things. And all of a sudden, they turn and they seen this kid peeking from behind a tree. And they were looking, says, "Hey, hey, how are you? We just moved in." And the kid hid behind a tree. And he all of a sudden he didn't show up again. So they said, "Let's go, go see him." So they ran over to the tree, and there was nobody behind the tree. Oh, that was weird. So I'm not even thinking about it. So they went and started playing again, and then there he is behind the bush. He's moved the bush over, and he's peeking and looking at them again. He says, "Hey, come on, you can play with us. Come on, you can play with us." And they run over to the bush to see. He's gone. So the next thing they go back to the mom and say, "Hey, there's a kid in the neighborhood. We're going to play with him when we move and everything." So it goes on that they finally moved in, and it was I think it was in the spring that they started to walk around the neighborhood to meet the people and all. So they went to this one house, and they were looking for that little boy. He says, "Hey, did you have a little boy that plays here and things like that?" And the people, no, we don't have any boys that play here. So they went to other people's house. Then they finally went to this a little further up the road, and they found an older woman, and they says, "Do you have a grandson who comes and plays with you?" She goes, "Oh, I did one time, but no more." She says, "Oh." I'm trying to cut the story a little shorter for you. I know you're running out of time.
No, it's okay. You take your time. You're good.
Okay, so they says, the woman says, come on in the house." So they come in the house, they're talking and whatever. And Vesna, the woman who I'm talking to, right? She looks on the piano, and there's a picture of the family, of that woman's family, and she goes, "Hey, that's the boy right there. That's the boy. This is the boy we want to play with." And she goes, "Oh, you can't play with him, honey. He's no longer here." "Oh no, we saw him. We saw him. A while back. We were playing in the backyard." She goes, "No, no, no. He drowned in the lake 2 years ago, or some time ago. He had drowned in the lake. He took out a rowboat, fell overboard, and drowned in the lake in the backyard. It was a horrible time." But I said, "That's real." She goes, "I'm telling you." She goes, "It's the truth." She goes, "You could call my brother. He's my witness." And she gave me his phone number. You tell him about the boy at the lake, and he'll tell you the story. He may hesitate at first, but he'll tell you the whole story, what he saw about it. So it's amazing. It just said they couldn't find footprints, because she says we looked for his footprints in the snow. We couldn't see it. We didn't see his footprints where he ran or anything. It's amazing. That one was really scary. That was a good scary one.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we go to questions, I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep asking a couple more. So
Yeah.
you've experienced UFO, you've experienced the paranormal,
Right.
you've also kind of experienced a Bigfoot of some sort. You want to tell everybody a little bit about that, and then we'll get to the questions.
Yeah, but like I told my brother, I used to like to hunt in Naugatuck. It's called Hunter's Mountain, Hunter's Mountain in Naugatuck. It's right off of Route 8. And it was a winter's day, a nice day, no snow. It wasn't snowing, but there was snow on the ground and everything. And I was just putzing around, looking for rabbit tracks and things like that, when I came across footprints. Again, there were footprints, not shoe prints, footprints. You could see the toes. You could see the toes on them. And I'm saying, now, who the hell would be walking around barefoot in the winter up here in this mountain? So I said, maybe somebody lost or something. I'm going to see if I can track it, see if somebody, because they look, I'm not saying they look real old, but they look kind of fresh. I was saying about maybe 8 or 10 hours old. You could pretty much tell. They weren't crusted yet, but they looked like they were older than an hour or so. So I followed him, and I followed him along the power lines, off the power lines, and we went up onto the ledge. After I went up on the ledge, I lost him. And because it then became rock. There was no snow or ice over in that part. It was just a solid rock. I think it's granite. It was like a granite rock, solid. And then I went down there to see if I could find where the footprints left off. I was never able to find the footprints. Never. I went up and down. I would say maybe an eighth of a mile each way, and I couldn't find them. It just disappeared. But then, like I mentioned, then that TV show, Finding Bigfoot, whatever it was, they came and filmed right at that exact spot, the area where I seen the Bigfoot, whatever the footprints. They had two kids who lived. I know the house exactly where they live. They were playing on the trampoline, and they saw this creature, walking right by, and they swore it was a Bigfoot. It was interesting. It's sort of like validated that maybe I did see something that I didn't know what it was, but to disappear, the footprints just to be gone like that, I can't understand that.
Right.
I can't understand that.
So, not knowing anything about Bigfoot, and now talking to Al and talking to me yesterday about the Bigfoot thing, that's a common thing, that the trackway just ends.
My guess, there's two guesses to this, and I could show you here. In fact, my son-in-law gave me this gift. I don't know if you could see it.
Yep.
Do you see it?
Oh,
It says that explains it.
Yep.
And if you see, there's a Bigfoot going into a UFO. That's one of my thoughts. That's one of my ideas. That might be that, or they're interdimensional. For them to just disappear like that, a big thing like that, they're huge. Some of those things, my brother could tell you, they're huge. Just to disappear like that, there's something to it. Right. There's something to it.
It's unbelievable how they move.
Yeah,
and it makes sense. It makes sense, Frank, with the interdimensional or the UFO or I believe personally you're on. I believe what you're thinking. I think it has to have something to do with that. Because something that weighs 800 pounds is not the hide and seek champion of the world, and it's not going to not leave footprints and just disappear. And it
Right.
just, I agree with you, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm bringing people like yourself onto this program now, because there's a link between all this, and just want to make people aware that just because they're having stones thrown at them in the forest doesn't mean that it's a Bigfoot throwing stones at them. If they don't
Oh, that,
see
yeah.
them throwing stones, it sure as heck could be a spirit of some sort. It could be alien. It could be anything.
Yeah.
So
Now, have you ever been to Dudleytown?
no, but it's closed down now, and we can't get
Yeah.
in.
There's ways sneaking the back way, but they do parole it really very good. But when I was coming up, I met I was good friends with the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine. I don't know if
Yep.
you're familiar with the name, the
Yep. Oh yeah.
Warrens.
Father Bob Bailey was on the show last week, and he was good friends with the Warrens too.
Yeah. In fact, it was Ed who told me when I was studying to do parapsychology that I wanted to get into maybe a specific area of it. He told me, brought me to his side, and he put his finger up to my nose and says, "Don't get into the exorcism shit." In plain English, he says, "Don't get into that shit." And ever since then, we became friends, and it was good. It was a nice guy. I mean, he was really. I know people talk bad about them, but they really are good people. They really were good people.
That's what Father Bob said last week too. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a couple questions here for you. Miss Diane Fowler asks you, have you ever heard of signs of death? Like an owl staying a week in her grandfather's barn till he passed. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
I've heard, but maybe not an owl, but different things like butterflies. I've heard butterflies coming by and taking the person on to the next line. I've heard of that. What was the other thing? Butterflies. Oh, there was another thing. Not an owl, butterflies. Birds, certain birds, cardinals. The cardinals are famous for that. If you get a cardinal to come actually up to you, either somebody's passed away, or that might be a sign of the person sending you that the person has passed away and is sending you a sign that everything's okay.
Yeah. And this stuff is just not made up. I mean, someone didn't just see a cardinal and say it's coming to you because someone's passing or someone has passed. I mean, there has to be some kind of writing or teaching or something along the way that they figured that out. It just wasn't made up,
Yeah, I mean it's happened, many times. I mean through the centuries. They call it old wives' tales, but it does happen. Those things do happen. It's not just a wives' tale. That's the way I look at it.
We'll ask you. Well, here's another question from Miss Francesca. She asks you, who was the most famous true psychic that you ever met?
True. That's the key word. The true is the word. That's hard because I'm a little skeptical on most of them. Gee, probably the woman we worked with, Helen. She had to be unbelievable. I mean, we wouldn't tell her anything, and she would just bang it out like crazy. I mean, and she was no young woman. She was like in her 70s, and she just knew these things. It was just fantastic.
Was she the one that worked with Hans Holzer?
I'm not sure because, like I said, when James was with her, I believe Hans Holzner was more on the West Coast at that time. It could have been. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Might have been. I know we never asked her that. I just know that James worked with her for years, and that's how I got to know her. But I did meet Holzner, one time in New York City at I guess it was a conference that was there. He was a straight guy. I believe him. I believed his work. I do.
Okay, so last week I had Father Bob, and Father Bob is one of the priests that keep I can't believe I just forgot her name. Vidal, someone please help me in the chat. I just blanked her. Annabelle.
Annabelle.
All right. And so he is one of the guys that keeps Annabelle in the case and everything. Did you ever experience anything with like an Annabelle type haunting in your day?
No, the closest things were when we were doing an investigation right next to West Point, Vales Gate, New York, right next to West Point. We were doing an investigation on an old house that there was noises coming. They hear people talking and things of that nature. It's in the book. I can't recall the name of the people who were doing it, but we went there and we did an investigation. We heard the things falling and breaking. We would run down to the first floor to see, and there was nothing there. Then we go upstairs, and then we heard more noises. But that's about the closest I've come to seeing things like that. No, I'm honest with you. I never experienced anything stranger than that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it, my friend. We're gonna let you off the hook and let you get back on with your night. I'm gonna have you come back because I want to find out more about your background, your history, and
Sure.
stuff that you experienced, and that would be great. I got one more question here.
Yeah.
From Mr.
Go ahead.
Steve Wolf. He came in at the last second. You got in, Steve. Do you ask for Christ when things get gnarly?
I ask for Christ all the time. I ask him before and after things. I'm a Christian. I can't say I'm a great Catholic or go to church every Sunday, but I do believe there's higher powers. Definitely, I pray. Yes, I do.
Well, you did a great job tonight.
Thank
I
you.
just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and coming out of and not doing this for a while. You did a great job. You're a seasoned pro, and I think we have a lot more to learn from you. I think next time I'll bring Al on and we'll have him as a guest.
Sure, that'd be good. Yeah,
we'll have Al on too, and then we'll get. So before you go, you want to give a final thought to everybody before you head on out?
Yeah. My thought is keep an open mind. You got to keep an open mind on everything. Right. I haven't, like I said, I haven't been doing this in a long time. Right now, I'm in what they call a conspiracy theorist person now, but I have reasons for that. But keep an open mind on things. Don't believe everything you hear and read. Yeah, especially that's in mainline public, main things.
Right. And go out and buy the book, everybody. Paranormal Family and Friends. What do you want everybody to leave in the comment section to win the book, Frank? What do you think they have to come up with? What do they got to put in the comments after the show to win your book?
Let's see, what do they have to put in? That they experience these things. That I'm not the only one out there looking at these things all the time. I want everybody to get involved in this. Let's bring out I want to say truth. Let's bring out what really is out there. I mean, there's so much we don't know about. I'm telling you, we're going to learn though. Things are going to come out. I really do believe things are going to come out.
All right. So in the comment section after the show, to win an autographed copy of the book, put "Be aware." Mm-hmm. Be aware. And that's what, and I will do a drawing in 2 weeks. So next week I'm on call for work, so I don't do a show. So thank you so much, Frank. I'm going to put you backstage for a little bit, and then I will say goodnight to you after I get done with everybody here, and then I'll be right back.
Chris.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, our guest for tonight, Mr. Frank Santariga. All right, everybody. Thank you for showing up tonight. What a great show. What a great guy. Oh, my goodness. It was that Ouija board thing gave me the chilly willies, boy. Oof. Again, Paranormal Family and Friends. You can get on Amazon. if you want a copy. To win the copy, you have to go in the comment section after the video is posted and put "be aware," and please like and subscribe, and please go on to my channel also, Real American Monsters, and subscribe. We're getting ready to get back out there and get videos coming back out there. So I won't be here next week, everybody. In 2 weeks, we're going back into the Bigfoot realm. We're going to have another Mutt and Jeff episode with M.K. Davis and Mr. Don Monroe. They're both going to join us on their last expedition they both did to Bluff Creek, where MK captured the footage of the towel beater on the side of the road, and then they might have caught another one up in the trees next to the lair. They took Roger Patterson's book and they actually found the area where the lair that he talks about in the book. They're going to bring you there. They're going to bring pictures. They're going to bring film. They're going to talk about it. So in 2 weeks, Mutt and Jeff, first episode on Real American Monsters, the return to Bluff Creek. So I'm very excited about that. So that's all we got for this week. Remember, everybody, in America, monsters are real.